Okay, so we are going to switch into chapter 9 because that is the last section we have before your exam 2. So section 9.1 is the basics of simple interest. And take a look at your objectives there. I wouldn't worry about writing them down. Okay. So, simple interest is interest charged on the entire principal for the entire length of the loan. When you think about this kind of stuff, you want to think more like auto loans. Your house loan has a little bit different interest. Or actually, insurance might be the different part there. You know how like when they tell you to have a certain portion down for your house, the magic number is actually 20%. If you can save 20% down, then you don't have to pay on your mortgage insurance, which is really nice. So principal is the loan amount, rate is the annual interest rate, and time is the length of the loan in years. The part there about the length of the loan in years, uh, it's basically the length of the loan. Pearson will show you that it can be years, months, and sometimes even days. So don't get yourself so caught up in the fact that it has to be translated into years. Um, just know that the time is the length of the loan, and that yes, most likely you will have years. If they give you years, that's fine. If they give you other things, you have to kind of put it in terms of years. So obviously 12 months is a year, and you would think 365 days, but for some reason they use 360 days for the bank. And then there's one problem that you get to where you have to use 365. So just kind of read your questions carefully. All right, so when rate or must be changed to decimal or fraction. Obviously, I would recommend just the decimal. Um, T must be converted to years. Oh, I'll show you that one again in case you're writing it down. Okay. Okay. Let's look at example 1. Jessica Hernandez needs to borrow $85,000 for 9 months. Her bank would not lend her the money since she has no experience or assets. Since she found an individual who would lend her the money at 18.5%, however, her uncle agreed to go to the bank and co-sign on a loan for her, which means he will have to repay the loan if Jessica fails to do so. On this basis, the bank agreed to lend her the money at 10% simple interest. Find the interest at 18.5% and at 10%, and then the amount saved using the lower interest rate. So obviously, it's kind of a no-brainer that if all that information is the same, that you want to go with the interest rate that is lower. Although, the fact that she needs this specific money for 9 months is rather interesting. I think they literally just made it up. I don't know what application it could have. So the first thing we have to do is convert the 18.5% to a decimal form. And then 9 months to the year, which would be 9 over 12, right? Because we know there are 12 months in a year. Then we want to substitute those values into the formula, which is I equals P times R times T. You will get to know that formula as if you were born knowing it. You have to use it so much. It's quite a lot. All right, so our principal is the 85,000. Our rate for part A is 18.5, so 0.185. And then our time is 9 months, so 9 over 12. When you do that in your calculator, you end up with an interest of 11,793 and 75 cents. Now, that is not what she would actually end up paying the bank. She would end up paying the bank what in total? How did we figure it out?
1193 to
Yes. Um, Tim, you're cutting in and out, but I agree. You're going to take the interest
I
and you
didn't
will.
know. I didn't know if it was me. You were doing the same thing. I can try to leave and rejoin. Is it still doing it?
You can to try and fix that. Um, okay, so hopefully my sound is doing okay. Um, yes, you want to add the interest to the principal, and that would be the total um, of what she would have to pay back to the bank, or her uncle would have to pay back. All right. So, but luckily we know that our question is the difference in the interest. So let's look at the second percent now. So in part B, we're concerning ourselves with the 10%. So to make the 10% into a decimal, we're going to do 0.10. And then we will follow the same steps that we used for part A. So you can see there that that interest is a huge difference. At 10%, you're looking at $6,375. And when we take the difference there, we can clearly see how the percentages impact. Okay. And then that is the answer there for C. If you're writing it down, go ahead. All right. Questions on that kind of problem. That is a very, very simple version of what you're going to be doing. They do get harder, but that is a simple one and it's very easy to follow through, I think. All right. Here it just says Hernandez quickly learned an important lesson. Interest cost can be very high. She was delighted that her uncle had agreed to co-sign for her. It saved her nearly $5,500 in interest charges in only 9 months. So here's the thing though, I don't really understand how likely it would be for this person who has obviously never borrowed a large sum of money before or any money before uh, to be able to borrow so much money and then think that they can pay it back in 9 months. I really don't understand what it is she's going to do with the money unless she's literally just going to try to go get something and just needs to show that she has a buttload of money in her bank account and then turn around and give it all back. I have no idea what she could be possibly be doing. All right. Um Maturity value is the amount that must be repaid when the loan is due. This is found by adding principal and interest, which we just talked about that in the first problem. Remember, we took the 85,000 plus the interest, and that's what she would have had to pay the bank back. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and look at this next example, and that's probably going to be what they want us to find. All right. So Tom Swift needs to borrow 28,300 to remodel his bookstore so that he can serve coffee to customers as they browse or sit at their computers. Probably should have phrased that differently because that literally looks like they're just browsing on their computer and sitting at it, but obviously he means browsing the books. He borrows the funds for 10 months at an interest rate of 9.25%. Find the interest due on the loan and the maturity value at the end of 10 months. Okay, so let's go ahead and do this problem without looking at their solution. What's my principal here? Out of the
8,300.
Yes, very good. So this is our principal. I also want to have this out just so I can see who all I can shout out to. All right. We then need to find our rate. So what's our interest rate going to be for this problem?
The 0.0925.
Right. Once you go through and make it into the decimal, so it'll be 0.0925. Very good. And then of course our time is 10 months, and do we want to just put a 10 in there? How do we want to write that?
10/12.
Very good. Now, if you really wanted to, you could simplify, but your calculator is going to do it for you, so don't worry about doing that. If I were you, I would leave things the way they are, so when you're looking at them and trying to figure out if you did something wrong, you can more easily see where those mistakes might be if you leave them unsimplified or unreduced. Okay, so let's go ahead into our calculators. Let's figure out what this interest rate's going to be. And what do you guys get?
2,181 and 46 cents.
Good. Remember, you always run around to the nearest cent unless for some reason it tells you not to, and then you would round to the nearest dollar. But is that what they want for this specific problem? Is that what they asked us to find? So it did ask us to find the interest due. So we definitely did that. What was the other thing they asked us to do?
Find the maturity value.
Very good. And we already know from Tim telling us last time that we want to take the principal plus the interest. So for this case, we're going to take the 28,300 plus the interest down at the bottom, which was the 2181.46. So you are looking at, what are we looking at for a total here?
$30,481 and 46 cents.
Good. Good. All right. In a moment, I will show you all of that written much neater, but every once in a while, I have to show you guys that I still know how to do math. Okay. All right. Interest due, we were correct, 2,181 and 46 cents. The maturity value there, of course, the 30,481 and 46 cents. As we continue to work with this, you will find the only nice thing about interest is once it is like as you're making payments, once you're lowering that principal, then the interest slowly starts to reduce as well. Um, so then that can kind of change your payment. The only time that doesn't really help you is if you have something called a fixed loan, which means that even if you pay the loan off early, you had it for a fixed amount, so then that interest is already figured out. So even if you pay you make bigger payments, um the monthly payment due will always be the same until you finally start lowering it to the point where basically um, your your balance due will be less than your monthly payment normally is. If you're working through loans like that, you might as well just pay it off early. All right. Any questions on those two types of problems? They're fairly simple. I don't think you have to do that many of them, but as you work through the ending portions of these chapters, it starts to get a little bit more building on top of each other. But again, um, I really feel chapter 6 was the hardest chapter for this class. So the fact that you're going to be almost completely done with chapter 6 and you'll only have to worry about it a little bit on exam 2 and then well on exam 2 and then a little bit of it on the final, that seems to be pretty good for us. All right. Use a table to find the number of days from one date to another. So that table looks like this. I don't know if you can see it in my little window, but it is on Canvas. All of the tables that are referenced in our PowerPoints, I have them in each chapter that they belong in, as well as in a huge table listing at the beginning of Canvas. So again, much like I tell my stats students, if I'm giving you a table, you can use that table on the exams. Obviously, you guys can use pretty much anything on your exams. Um, but you want to also print those out, I think. If you have a way to print them out, I definitely would suggest doing so. In addition to that, if you can't print them out, then maybe if you have like an iPad or a tablet, you could have the table pulled up like really big and zoom in on it while you're taking your test. All right. Um, so a loan may be given in days. A loan may be due at a fixed date. We have to have a way to figure out the number of days until the loan must be paid off. Okay. One way to do this is to use a table as seen on the next slide and the back cover of the text. I had no idea it was on the back cover of the text. They're full of shiitake mushrooms. It's not on the back of that text. I don't know what they're talking about. No, no, it's not on there. They lie. So if you guys have a physical copy, maybe they don't lie to you, but they lied to me. All right. So this is how this works. Your copy is all on one page. They're just showing you half of it for the sake of the slide. But here's our day of the month. You can see they have it on both sides so that if you're kind of more like December, November, October, it might be easier to come from this side and go to the left instead of coming all the way over from the right. I would recommend just getting a ruler if you don't already have a ruler, or you can take a sheet of paper, whatever, something that is, straight edged, and just follow it straight down. The other option you can have is if you really wanted to, you can use a calculator on the internet, but honestly, this is almost faster sometimes because then you have to leave the program, you have to Google it, you have to go into it's so whatever. You guys can make your just decisions. Also, for whatever reason, I think sometimes when I use the Google count or the Google lookup, it was off by a day, and I don't really understand that. So this, I didn't ever have a mistake when I used the table for the days that they give. All right. Okay. Any questions on how to use that table? Because you will have to use it. All right. Cool. All right. So here's an example. We can look at these if you really want to. Maybe the one to really only focus on will be the C and D, November 8th to February 17th of the following year. So if we're doing that, um, that would be this page. So November 8th would be day 312. And then what was the other date? February 17th. So February 17th would be the 48th day of the next year. So then they should just have to add it. Yep. So this is what they had to do. You had to figure out that 312 is 53 days from the end of the year. And then 48 is 48 days, or the 17th is 48 days into the new year. And then they just added them. All right. It really all depends on what you have to do with these. Sometimes you subtract, sometimes you find them and have to add, sometimes you find them and have to find the differences between them and another number. You just really have to pay attention to what you're working with. But um, I think as long as you do your homework, you'll be okay for the test. All right. Um, if we have December 2nd is day 336, so then there are 29 more days left in the year. And then we want to add days until the end of the year plus the days into the next year. So 29 and 17 gives us total 46 days. Okay. Again, not really too difficult. Some of your homework problems are literally just that straightforward. If you are at this day, tell me about this day. That's all. All right, use the actual number of days in a month to find the number of days from one date to another. The number of days between specific dates can be found using the number of days in each month of the year as shown in the table. So here we have days that are 31. Remember, you can use your knuckle approach. You can look it up, you can memorize it, whatever you want. But we have 31 days, 30 days, and 28 days for February, except for leap years, which is 29. Right? So here they're literally just showing you the rhyme. And then here they're helping you figure out your leap years. I don't think we need to spend any more time on that, right? Cool. Again, here are your knuckles. We just talked about that.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
Are there going to be any examples of like actual leap years being used in problems?
I want to say there was maybe one homework question on it. I don't know if it's on the exam or not. But basically all you do is so when you're looking at your table, typically the table stops for February 28th at 59 days. Then with the leap year, the 29th day of February would just become the 60th day of the year. It just literally changes everything by one day. But you don't really end up needing to care about the rest of the days in that year. So you just have to add one to each day after the 29th for a leap year. It literally gives you a little hint up at the top. But like I said, I think it was only one homework question, maybe. Like I don't remember. I remember at least reading the term leap year. So, all right. So go ahead and if you have the table, if you have the table, go ahead and try and use the table. If you don't, you can obviously follow along and then figure it out next time. So you have a couple of options. You can either find it from the second one first or find it from the first and then realize that you have to make a regular subtraction out of it. So I would go to the 14 on the right side and I would scroll over to August and we get the day for August 14th being day 226. So this date is the 226th day of the year. And then June 3rd, we have to go up to the 3 and we go over to June and it's day 154 of the year. And then you would just subtract those. So you would end up with 226 minus 154. So 72 days in between them. All right. Similar for part B, except, no, that's still, nope, I lied. It's into the next year. So you have to do the extra step where you take November 4th would be day 308. So you have to take 308 away from 365. And then February 21st would be the 52nd day. So whatever the 365 minus 308 would be 57. And then plus 52. So it should be 109. So let's go ahead and check those. So there's that one. And if you're writing it down and you didn't follow it, go ahead and write that down. All right. Okay, let's take a look at the second one. And again, we were correct on that one as well. The only table you will need for exam 2 will be this day table, and the other one will be the tax tables, but I believe they are included in the exam. So you don't have to go looking for those anywhere. All right. Questions on how you do that? No? Okay. Find the exact and ordinary interest. Exact. So this is the different thing I was talking about. Exact interest calculations require the use of the exact number of days in a year, which is 365 or 366 for a leap year. Ordinary interest or banker's interest calculations require the use of 360 days. I will tell you that when I was going through this homework, I thought it was really easy, and then I would end up getting questions wrong. This 360 days was the only reason why I would get problems wrong. So if it says banker's interest, or even if it doesn't say what to use, always use the 360 unless it asked for exact. Okay. Okay. All right. Finding time in fraction of a year. When using interest equals principal times rate times time, since the rate is given in years, time must also be in years. So you may have to convert time. So to do that, it's the number of days in the loan divided by the number of days in a year. When we get to chapter 12, you have to do some very interesting things with that. Always remember that the bottom number is the 360. Okay. So it's not going to be the day of the loan divided by the number of days in the loan. It's always the day that something is happening divided by the 360. Okay. Again, here's your difference between exact and ordinary. I am telling you for the Pearson, if they don't tell you to use exact, then you need to use the 360. All right. If you take nothing else away from this chapter, know that you're going to use the 360 unless you read the words exact interest. Okay.
Would there be any loans over a year?
Yes, you can have loans over a year, but if that would be the case, they would not be broken down into days.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Okay, let's check out this example. Radio station Coma borrowed 148,500 on May 12th with interest due on August 27th. If the interest rate is 10%, find the interest of the loan using exact interest and ordinary interest. We still have a whole nother section to get through, so we're kind of going to do this fast style. So for the first one, if we're doing exact, here's the only difference between the two. Exact, they're going to use 365. For part B, they're going to find it the exact same way, no pun intended, except it's going to use 360, not 365. Okay. Any questions on how to do this? All right. They got the 107 because they figured out where May 12th was. They figured out where August 27th was. And they figured it was 107 days apart. Okay. The vast majority of the time, the problem will give you everything you need to solve it. So if you're having trouble, you're just missing something. And I will tell you that sometimes you have to kind of step away from it and then come back. And sometimes you have to completely forego the problem, get it completely wrong, and then try again fresh with a new one. And for some reason, the steps you follow, even though they were the exact same, you end up getting it right the second time. All right. Here's the second approach. Again, remember, look, their only difference is 360 instead of 365. And it is telling you in this example, the ordinary interest is $60.46 more than the exact interest. And of course, that makes sense because you're dividing it by less days. All right. Any questions on that? Oh, okay. Define the basic terms with notes. A promissory note is a legal document in which one person or firm agrees to pay a certain amount of money on a specific day in the future to another person or firm. So these are very interesting. They are literally notes that are written that are promising an amount which the person or company may or may not have yet. But by that time, they are signing a legal document saying that they are going to procure that amount, and that when they do, they are going to give it to the said individual or other company. Um, Very interesting. I don't know how much I trust them. Um, Obviously, I mean they're legal, so you could go after someone if as long as signed it in front of a notary, I guess. Um, and surprisingly enough, sometimes when companies buy land off of one another, they will use these promissory notes in parts of the deal. It's very interesting. If I take anything away from teaching this class, this might be one of the things I take away from it, because this is very, very interesting to me. And it says basic terms here because there's no extra stuff going on with it, as you will see in some of your homeworks for this chapter. If you want to do the rest of chapter 9 and try those homeworks, you can, but you can also just wait and do only 1 and 2 to prepare for your test, and then you can do 3 and 4 after spring break. Just remind me if it locks for whatever reason, and I will reopen it. Simple interest note 1, maker or payer, the person borrowing the money. The payee is the person who the loan will be receiving the money, which in this case we have Madeline as the payee, or the payer, sorry, and the payee is Charles Miller. The term, of course, is 90 days. You can get that by taking March 6th to June 4th. And the face value or the principal, those are the exact same things. So please don't get confused. Face value and principal, exactly the same. Even if they mention both of them, it's the same thing. That was a little confusing on some of the homework as well. Maturity value is the face value or the principal plus the interest, and also the amount due at maturity. The maturity date or due date is the date that the loan must be paid off. So here's June 4th. And again, the face value here is 27,500. All right, finding interest and maturity value. This again should at this point should be a little bit like review for you. You're going to take the principal or the face value, which for some reason when we're talking about promissory notes, they change that to face value. I guess because it's literally what's on the face. It's what you're seeing first. We're going to multiply it by the 9%, and then it's 90 out of 360 days. So you get an interest of 618.75, which is great for Charles because he gets another $618.75 tacked onto the face value, which gives the maturity value. Promissory notes are only going to be beneficial to the person receiving them. What do you think the benefit is for the person sending the money? Can anyone think of what the benefit might be to doing a promissory note from the person sending it? What do you think could be your advantage there? So obviously the person receiving it is getting more money because there's an interest rate on it, right? So what is the person paying it? What are they getting out of a promissory note? Anybody have an idea? Okay. They're getting time, right? So instead of owing Charles 27,500 or whatever it was that immediate day, Madeline is buying herself basically 90 extra days, and it's only costing her an additional $618. Okay. All right. Find the due date of a note. Time in months. Loan is due after a given number of months has passed on the same day of the month as the original note was made. So here's the date, here's the length, and here's the due date. So March 12th, 5 months, August 12th. All right, are we getting how this works? You're literally just counting the number of months, and typically the due dates, it kind of depends. So for the note, of course, it's going to be the same day unless you legally have it written that it can be a different date. What kind of changes there would be like sometimes credit card companies, you might get a credit card started in the middle of the month or the end of the month or the beginning or what have you. And a lot of credit card companies want all of their money to come in at once. So if you miss that prior cycle, they might just chalk your what you pay a little bit now and then chalk it up into your next payment. So those are not always the same for all things. All right, let's look at example 6. Find the due date, interest, maturity value for a $600,000 loan made to Benson Automotive on July 31st for 7 months at 7.5% interest. Again, remember, we're going to go pretty fast on this. Interest and principal are due 7 months from July 31st, which would make that February 31st. Which does not exist since February has only 28 days unless it's a leap year, which even then you're not going to get to 31. So then you're looking at what, March 3rd? I would assume it'd be March 3rd, right?
I think 7 months after July 31st.
Yeah, so so it's already saying that it's February 31st, which doesn't exist. So then so 29, 28. Wait,
I think it's the 28th.
29,
February.
30. So March 3rd would be like if you went the true 7 months. But yes, what it's saying here is that it'll be due on the last day of February. Okay. So so then that way people won't get confused. They just know it's the last day of the month, which to be honest with you, that's probably would have been when I would have paid it anyway. All right. So to find the interest, we're going to take the principal times the rate times the 7 months, 7 over 12, and you get that interest, and then you have to add it to the principal to find the maturity. All right. All right. Finally, this was a very long lesson. I apologize. Anybody have questions on this information? I really, really think you'll all be pretty decently fine if you just do your homework before you do your exam. And I guess if you wanted, you could do your minor quizzes. What would that be? The one for chapter 6, 7, 8, and then I would hold off on doing 9 till after your exam. Okay, let's switch over to, okay. So we're gonna move on to 9.2, finding principal, rate, and time. There are your objectives, nice and simple. So when we're talking about principal, we may at times need to rearrange this interest formula, okay? And much like your base, part, and rate, it's pretty simple. If you start with the formula and you need to rearrange it, you have the algebra skills to do so. All right. So if you're looking for principal, you're going to take the interest and divide it by the rate times the time. All right. Again, your calculator should be able to do the majority of this for you. Any questions on how to find the principal? All right. Again, here it is just written out. Okay. Note, use banker's interest with 360 days for all problems in this section. That probably would have been helpful to know when I was working through the homework. See, we learned so much with the PowerPoints. All right, Gilbert Construction Company borrows funds at 10% for 54 days to finish building a home. Find the principal that results in the interest of 1,560. Write the rate as 0.10, the time as 54 over 360, and then use the formula for principal. So you're going to take 1560 and divide it by 0.10 times 54 over 360, which then ends up being 1560 divided by 0.15. So you get a principal of 104,000. Okay. Let me know, Anna, when you're done, because I don't know if anyone else is taking written notes. So you'll be our time person.
I'm done now.
You're done now? Okay. All right. So I want everybody to take a look at this one and try to figure it out before we move on to the answer. All right. Okay, so go ahead and take a look at the solution. Let me know if you have any questions with that one. Okay, so the first thing they had to do was find the number of days. So their time there is 72 days. So they take 72 over 360 And then to find the principal, they're going to take the interest and divide it by the rate times the time. So they end up with a principal of 7,200.
Is that what the 0.013 is? The interest?
No, the interest is actually 6.5%.
What's the 0.013?
When you take 6.5 times your 72 over 360, it reduces to 0.013.
Oh, okay. I just turned my 72 over 360 into
A
into
decimal.
decimal. Yeah.
Yeah, you can do it either way. That's just what they're showing. Okay. All right, so now we have to look at finding rate. And again, you're going to basically look at the interest formula and rewrite it to find rate. So rate is going to equal interest divided by principal times time. Okay. So let's look at an example for that. Okay. Anyone have questions on this one? Let me know if you need any more time with it. Oops. Apologies. All right. So for this one, they had the interest of 1813, they had the principal of 10,000, and then they had the days of 45 over 360. So when they worked everything out, they ended up with a 1.45%. Right? Okay. Go ahead and take a look at this example. All right, let me know if you guys need anything explained. Okay, so they took and found their dates. August 16th is day 228. June 1st is day 152. So they found the difference in the days to be 76. 76 over 360 is their time. They were given their interest, they were given the principal. So when they work it out, they end up with a rate of 2%. All right. All right, so here's how we're gonna find time. So time, when you rearrange the interest formula, is gonna give you time equal to interest divided by principal times rate. Okay. Okay. Here it is written in words for you. Again, take a look here. You have a different factor that you have to multiply by if you're looking for days in time. So if it's in years, you're fine. You just do the formula. If it's time in days, you have to multiply by 360. And if it's time in month, you have to multiply by 12. Okay, any issues or questions on that? Okay, let's look at the example that they have for it. Roberta Sanchez deposited 18,600 in an account paying 3%, and she earned $217 in interest. Find the number of days that she deposited, that the deposit earned interest. So interest divided by principal times your rate, and then they multiplied by 360 because it's literally told them days. So 140 days is their answer. And I would want you to give it to me actually with the word days there. They dropped their label. Remember, if you drop your label, you get points taken off. Okay. That is the end of 9.2.